Welcome back guys, it's Star here to give you a good grade hopefully. Now a precondition for you watching this video is that I would advise you to take a official UCAT exam now and try the verbal reasoning section, which is going to be the first section, so that you're able to appreciate the tips that I will give you. Many of you will probably just carry on watching the video, that's fine, but what I would seriously advise is for you to try it out yourself and then to see the tips that I've given you, whether it helps you or not, and you will see the massive difference. What I will not be doing is explaining the question types, because we'll be seeing that within the guide through that is to follow this video, whereby I go through the questions and analyze them with you. But within this verbal reasoning section, there will be 11 passages, each with 4 questions. Now, there are 2 different types of questions. There's true, false, cannot tell, then there's the comprehension questions. Now, the verbal reasoning section is by far the hardest section of the UCAT test. Now, you might say that's subjective, that's not true. I know people who got 700 in this section. Well, if you've honestly got 700 in this section, you're probably a bookworm. Clearly, they're a beast, but most likely what they would have done is they would have had a habit making them accustomed to books like Harry Potter. Now, from the most basic tips that I will give you is that, number 1, that you ensure that you only rely upon the information given in the text. Now, you're probably saying that's obvious. For example, if the passage says the leader of the German Nazi party was the one who commissioned an airstrike. If the question then gets on to say, was Adolf Hitler the one to commission the airstrike? Now, you probably say, of course, yeah. But yeah would be wrong, because you cannot tell. Now, you're relying upon your own history background to be able to answer this sort of question, and so the correct answer would be cannot tell. So what you have to ensure is that you simply rely upon the information given in the text alone. Now, tip number 2 is to avoid targeted reading, which this is essentially in the section that you read the question first and then you come to the text. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is not because it simply doesn't follow my way and I want you to listen to me, otherwise you're going to fail the test. That's not the reason. The reason why I'm saying this is because many a times there's a context in which statements are said. For example, if the statement that you have found that you believe answers the question is within quotation marks, it doesn't necessarily mean that that was fact. Could be, depending on the context, the person's opinion, which if you were simply just to read that sentence, you wouldn't understand. You would select the wrong answer, and hence you would waste a very easy question. Hence you would lose the ability to get that 1 mark that may have been easier to get in comparison to the other questions within the verbal reasoning section. Another reason for not doing targeted reading is the fact that sometimes you're looking for a certain phrase, and what you fail to realize is that UCAT know that you're trying to do this. So sometimes they'll put in synonyms, and when they put in the synonyms, you'll be searching the whole text and you won't find the keywords that you're looking for. So now you've wasted 10-15 seconds, which is vital time within the UCAT, and now you're forced to read the text. So you have to lose more time, and this may add to your stress and essentially affect your mindset. And your mindset is one of the most valuable tools that you have within the UCAT. And the moment that you have a defeatist mindset within the exam, the test is over. Now, the 3rd tip, before I tell you this, I want you to be writing down the tips that I'm giving you to ensure that you have it available to you when you're taking the verbal reasoning section. So the 3rd tip is to look out for definitive as well as mitigating statements. Now, definitive statements are like certainly, impossible, always, must, and mitigating statements are essentially the opposite to that. So could, should, sometimes, at times, and these are essentially qualifiers. They qualify a verb or an action that takes place, and once you're able to spot the use of a definitive statement, it may render the question that's being answered true or false. Now, usually those are the sort of answers for questions that have definitive statements or mitigating statements. Or with mitigating statements, I would advise it's either going to be very clear cut or it's going to be can't tell. Now, the people who've actually made the UCAT exam are clever. Now, one of the tricks that they use is juxtaposition. Now, they will place sentences that do not have a direct causation next to each other. So you would assume that the 2 sentences are linked. Now, by this, I will hopefully give an example at the top left screen or at the top, wherever it is. But hopefully it should be clear to you guys that just because sentences are together, it does not force a linkage between them. What you need are bridging statements, like because of, as a result of, to assume a link. So they will try catch you out on this. They probably will definitely be, there will definitely be an example of this within the UCAT exam that you should look out for. Now, the fifth tip is not to generalize. By this I mean, which will be explained in the example. Now, in the passage, if it mentions that police has come to arrest the workers within the law firm, and the question asks you, has the lawyers been arrested? You are not certain that there were lawyers within the building, even though it's a law firm. However, this is a very common fault that people fall into, so I really wanted to highlight this so that this doesn't happen. And with the comprehension questions, one thing that I would honestly beg you, I beg you, please do not dismiss all the options that are available to you until you have read. By this I mean that do not just assume one answer is 100% correct without reading all the other choices. It may be the case that two views are mutually exclusive, and hence one of them must be right over another, which you were indecisive about, and there may be supporting phrases within the body of text that helps you dismiss one of the options. So it is very, very important that you ensure that you read all four options for the comprehension question, then selectively remove the ones that are impossible to get the right answer. Tip number 7, this may go against everything that I've just mentioned. However, this is probably one of the things that saved me within the verbal reasoning section, as being mildly dyslexic, is guessing. You probably are saying, I probably won't do that, I'll answer all the questions. You won't. There are no two ways about it. I know people who simply answered 6 passages, so that's 24 questions out of the available 44, and still got a score of 650. 6 passages, so that's essentially leaving 5 passages unread. This shows you that they must have guessed, or they must have scored very well in the section that have done. But what they did, one advice that they gave, one thing that they would do is within the last 15 seconds, they would triage the questions. By this I mean they would go through all the questions and simply select a certain answer, like yes or no, through all of them. Now, you may be thinking, I don't know if I want to do that, but this is the best thing to do. The moment you start selecting yes for one, no for the other, can't tell, there's a greater possibility that you probably get them wrong. Now, the best thing for you to do is to stick with a certain yes or no or cannot tell, so that at least potentially you could get 3 or 4 of them right out of the available 20 questions. And with this tip, it shows you the importance of being advised before you take the UCAT exam. This is very important because the extra 3 questions that you may have answered may have boosted your score by 30, and the other sections you may have increased it by 30, by 30, by 30. Now, 30 points within the UCAT can be the difference between being below the cutoff line and being above the 7th or 6th decile. Now, this is very, very important. For example, like Queen Mary, where I have an offer. A close friend of mine got 570. Now, he was disappointed, but he was only 20 points off, and had he got the 590, possibly he could have been given the space at the interview because he had 3 A stars prediction. Now that I've given you the small tips, it's time to get on to the master tips that I could say potentially saved me on the verbal reasoning section. If you have very minimal time, I have an ebook that is present in the link description, and that's my killer tips. Essentially, I explained them in the video, but there are some tips in there that I haven't really explained. Basically, catch you guys on the other side.
Why is it hard for me? Why is it hard?